when you sit there meditating or just, walking along by the ocean or something, and you realize the mind is off in a daydream. First thing you do is just recognize, oh, daydream. You're not trying to change anything. You just recognize daydream. And then you release it. And release it is not pushing it away, but there's a part of the mind that will grasp onto it. So to release something, you just don't hold on to it so hard anymore. Recognize, release, relax. And that allows the mind to quiet down, and it will jump back into old habits. So it's recognize, release, relax. And then there's how do you bring a more peaceful quality in? And that's where people can over effort. But the one thing about the human neurology is that actually when we smile, sort of like a Buddha half smile, it actually triggers, a kind of lightness inside. So recognize, release, relax, re-smile. You're going to be doing it a lot. Just bring the corners of the mouth up a little bit. And as you do that, you can feel this little bit of peacefulness comes there. And then you return to whatever your home base is for meditation. Here we are.
Here we are. Hello, Doug.
Hello. Hello.
Wonderful
Good
to
to meet
meet
you. Yeah. I said it first.
you. Today I'm speaking to Doug Kraft. Doug is a meditation teacher. He's been a minister for many years. He's also an author of quite a few books. And I'm very honored to have you here today, share you with my audience.
Thank you. Thank you.
Recently, a friend of mine suggested to reach out to you and speak to you. She said that your books are very helpful. And I thought, wow, let's give it a try. So I went through the list. It's a long list. And I picked one book. And I started reading it. And I think that it should be in the education system. Like really helping people to realize what is going on and how we are meant to approach this experience.
Yeah.
Because we don't learn that. And this information is out there. Well, unless you know, you don't know.
Yeah.
So the book I picked up is Befriending Your Mind. And it's exactly the same what I'm doing in my work as well, just making friends with whatever is showing up and showing kindness. So it really resonates what you are talking about. And also it's very clear, and you can see different sections and different things that you can look at in very simple way. It's not as simple as one would like to, but yes, it is a simple way. And I would like to invite you today to speak about awakening. So my first question for you is, what is your definition of awakening?
Well, the metaphor, that comes out of Buddhism and a lot of other places, say to understand what's going on in human consciousness, one way is to just compare it to what it's like to be dreaming. And when you're dreaming, I mean, there's whole worlds and all kinds of stuff going on, and it's not real in the physical sense, but it feels real. And so what awakening is about is actually, it's almost like lucid dreaming. It's actually waking up and realizing that there's a part of you that's, metaphorically asleep, that is just really pulled around by the sensations, the thoughts, the feelings, all the stuff that's going on around us. So what awakening is about is actually seeing through all of that and seeing life just as it is. And it sounds very complicated, but the deep experience of it is just remarkably simple. It's just, quite ordinary. So that's all a little abstract, but I'll.
Okay, then who or what awakens? You mentioned that there is a lower part that is dreaming. What is that lower part?
Um, okay, that goes right to the core of the whole mystery. Um, so part of what happens with the human mind, etc., is, and particularly the human brain is particularly gifted at structuring things, at putting together models and storylines and ideas and all that sort of stuff. But it's all a layer on top of what the actual experience is underneath. So we like to think of ourselves as I'm here and you're there, and I have an essence and I have a soul, and you have an essence and you're a soul. But the reality is, when you look really deeply at it, is like everything which we, whatever we is, experiences, uh, is is related to and is connected to just about everything else out there. So in Buddhism, it's it's really called it's interdependent web, and how what we're looking at here each other. So I live in California. I'm on the West Coast here, and I'm looking at you right here in my room, but I also know you're actually on the other side of the planet in another sense. And so there are all these signals and stuff come through. And so what awakening is about is actually seeing all that. And part of what happens with that is you realize that um, our essence is, well, Buddhism is called Ciunaite. Just it means it's empty. It's really not there. So you being there and me being here and talking is sort of a social convention. But we live in this really interdependent relationship with everything else around us that we can't exist without that. Um, and it's all put together by the mind and the brain um, for the purpose of passing our genes on to the next generation. I mean, that's really all that.
That's not very romantic.
Yeah, it's not terribly romantic, but it's like when we successfully raise our children, our genes are passed on to the next generation. When we don't, our genes are taken out of the gene pool and those are gone. So, evolution favors that. Um, and it actually doesn't make a lot of difference from an evolutionary perspective, whether what we see is true or not. It's just whether it helps us procreate. But, in awakening, um, awakening is more dependent on seeing things as they actually are. So we can see how socially you're there, I'm here, we're talking to each other, etc. But that you and I, along with everything else, are either directly or indirectly connected to everything else. It's just that it's so complicated that if we try to take everything into account, it would take us forever to decide whether we're going to scratch our nose or not. So the brain has a way of simplifying all this, which is just fine. Um, but the peace and well-being that we're drawn towards is much more dependent on seeing things as they are. So, for example, um, I sort of think as this body here is an organism, which in some way is not me, but is sort of a traveling companion. And so trying to control it is actually not terribly helpful. But how we relate to it, that creates the conditions in the future, in the next moment. And if we have a friendly, open, heartful, clear, wise relationship to this traveling partner of ours, it tends to bring on more clarity and more depth that's really grounded in reality.
Makes so much sense. Traveling companion.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I'm glad it makes sense because I listen to myself saying this, and some of it just sounds really weird, compared to the social conventions. But, here we are. Here we are.
I think what sets people on a journey of seeking, or what ignites the bug of seeking,
Yeah.
is understanding or feeling or knowing that there's something off, that there's something wrong,
Right.
that
Right.
life could be different, that there are these people that they are talking on YouTube or writing books about being at ease, being connected, the oneness, the expanded state, and here's suffering, or here's this miserable experience that needs to be somehow changed or solved.
Yeah.
Because escaping is no longer working, it catches up.
Right.
So I think the whole seeking starts with having a realization that there is suffering and it can be different.
Yeah, and I think in terms of people who are dedicated to some type of path, is that they see through the delusion and they have some tiny taste of what it's actually like.
Mm-hmm.
And that provides a lot of motivation. I mean, why else would somebody sit down and close their eyes and do nothing for an hour? Unless there's some kind of intuitive grasp that there's actually more to be seen, more to be felt. And it's just that those experiences oftentimes just fly by so quickly that they don't quite register, but we feel them. And I think that's what gives rise to the sense that, oh, what I'm seeing out there, that's probably not quite right. But we don't know what's right, but that's sort of the motivation to get out and look more deeply, to look at how our mind and our hearts, because I think the meditation is really more heart-centered, uh, and how it feels, and to just explore those experiences with more and more surrender. Actually, I have this phrase I use every morning. It's surrender into the expanse. It's letting yourself dissolve into the everything of everything, and just taste it a little bit more. Taste it a little bit more.
Beautiful. Yeah, let's surrender to the expanse.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right here, right now.
Yeah. What I often say to people is if you sit here right now and you just see what's going on inside, and you notice there'll be thoughts and feelings and images and words and memories will be triggered. There's all this stuff that's kind of swirling through our brain, through our mind. And then just see if you step back from all that, if you can notice a place behind all that swirl of stuff that is just very peaceful. And we don't see it because it doesn't jump up and down and yell and scream at us. It's just quietly there. But most people, when they just step back a little bit, say, oh, of course that's there. Of course that's there. And the more often you touch into that, the harder it becomes to forget it.
True. The only thing is that people who haven't experienced that yet, or don't know how to get there yet,
Yeah.
it's so frustrating. It's like, what are they talking about?
Yeah. And so the most important part, because I have It's very rarely that I find somebody who can't get there. But what happens, for a lot of people is they actually try too hard.
Uh-huh.
And so when you're trying too hard, you create tension, and tension signals the brain that, oh, there's an emergency status, something going on here. And so it starts revving up, etc. And then you get all that stuff going on. And this is about just relaxing back. In Buddhism, it's called the second noble truth. It's that the suffering arises out of tension. Tanha is the word, out of tension. And the Buddha recommended that what you do with that tension. I've looked through all kinds of Buddhist scholars to try to figure out the translation of the word back there, and they all translated the same. It's abandon. The tension is to be abandoned. You just walk away from it. So how do you abandon tension?
Uh-huh. Good
You
question.
relax. You relax.
Right.
You
But
just
not by trying. Not by
but not
trying
by
to
trying.
surrender.
So one of the most important parts of meditation is when you're sitting there meditating and the mind goes off dreaming and rambling and, all the stuff that anybody who's ever meditated for more than 3 minutes is familiar with. When the mind goes off into that cloudy confusion, how do you get the mind to go from there back to this peaceful, connected, open state? And the mistake a lot of people make is they try to force it rather than treat it as something that exists there already. Because most people, even the ones who are listening to this, if you just take a moment and see if you can feel that quiet space behind it all and open up to it. And then my next question is, does this feel new? And for most people say, no, it feels like something that's ancient and it's been here a long, long time. It's just it's so quiet we don't notice it. And so this stillness, this quiet, this kind of serenity, I think is always with us. We just get distracted from it. So that comes back to waking up. It's not getting someplace different. It's actually waking up to what's actually here.
It's more like settling in, relaxing into, rather than getting somewhere.
That's right.
Go back.
So I have 3 strategies that I use that
Hey,
that
please
kind
share.
of evolved. The first one was one that I learned from a guy by the name of Bhante Vimalramsa, who died just a few years ago. And he calls it the 6 R's, which are recognize, release, relax, smile, but he needed an R, so he called it re-smile, return, and repeat. So what happens is when you sit there meditating or just walking along by the ocean or something, and you realize the mind is off in a daydream, first thing you do is just recognize, oh, daydream. You're not trying to change anything. You just recognize daydream. And then you release it. And release it is not pushing it away, but there's a part of the mind that will grasp onto it. So to release something, you just don't hold on to it so hard anymore. Recognize, release, relax. The problem in English is the word relax sometimes has a little bit of an aversive quality to it. So sometimes I like to say soften. Recognize, release, relax, or soften. And that allows the mind to quiet down and it will jump back into old habits. So it's recognize, release, relax. And then there's how do you bring more peaceful quality in. And that's where people can over effort. But the one thing about the human neurology is that actually when we smile, sort of like a Buddha half smile, it actually triggers, a kind of lightness inside. So recognize, release, relax, re-smile. You're going to be doing it a lot. Just bring the corners of the mouth up a little bit. And as you do that, you can feel this little bit of peacefulness comes there. Recognize, release, relax. And then you return to whatever your home base is for meditation. Many people, it's the breath. Bhante Villa-Ramsey really worked more with, they're called the Brahma-Viharas, but they are metta, which is translated as loving kindness. It actually means friendliness.
Mm. Oh, that's a nice distinction.
Yeah. The root word for that is friend, and so it's relational.
Mm-hmm.
So it's friendliness. The second quality is actually compassion. So when you see somebody who's suffering, if you see somebody who's doing just fine, there's a tendency for metta, for friendliness to arise. When you see somebody who's suffering, the same type of metta will really feel more like compassion. You have some concern for the suffering. Mudita, which is a harder word to translate, it's actually taking joy in someone else's well-being.
Mm.
You can see it particularly in kids, but also in friends and stuff like that. When they're having a good time, it awakens something in you. And then equanimity. So the 6 R's will bring you there. And the great thing about the 6 R's is that they will work no matter how jumbled the mind is. It really cuts through. And particularly if you're just welcome to use them a lot. So the 6 R's is one of them. Another way of doing it's much simpler because I went back and looked at the Buddha's writing and he doesn't have 6 R's. But the foundation of most Buddhist practice, of Buddhist teachings, is considered to be the Four Noble Truths, which itself is a translation difficulty. It's not noble in the sense of the truth, which you're seeing is not noble. It's the person who engages it is ennobled. So I like to think of it as the ennobling truths or the ennobling observations. And the first three of them can actually be used as meditation instructions. So the first one says there is suffering. It's not wishing suffering, it's just an observation, but that suffering is built into this life. And so if suffering comes up, we're not really to blame. It's no one's fault. It's just how this world is put together. And the verb that goes with that is understand. So the Buddha said suffering is to be understood. This is not intellectualized, but you just see how things are going along. Suffering arises, and if you watch it, it'll reach a peak and then it disappears. It kind of comes and goes. And so it's the capacity to just see all that. So the way I translate it into practice is turning towards.
Mm-hmm.
So difficulty comes up in your sitting, and rather than try to squish it or get rid of it or something, you just bring your attention to it. It's no attempt to change it, but just open up to it. The second one is the one I mentioned earlier, right? That the source of the suffering is actually resistance to suffering. It's tension. It's actually fighting it. I remember going for lots of physical therapy, and and massages and stuff like that, at one stage. And my feet are very, very compacted. And so when a good masseuse gets in there and starts opening up, it actually hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like to say it hurts good. I can feel what's coming out of it. If I were to fight that, it would certainly be painful, but it's like so welcome. It's like, okay, this is, it's starting to release. It's starting to release. So turn towards, relax into, or soften into, which allows the awareness just to go to right to the center of the suffering of whatever it's going on. And relax, abandon the tension there. And that tends to dissolve it. And the third noble truth is that Nirodha is to be realized. So there's a whole lot of translation issues that go on there. Nirodha technically can be looked at a deep, deep state of equanimity, but in a looser sense, it just refers to equanimity is to be realized. And I think that's it was difficult how it's translated to English, but I think realize there means make real. So if there's something that feels good, that feels soothing, how do you make it real? You let it soak into your bones. You just absorb it and just really take it in. So turning towards, relaxing into, and savoring, and if they're not uplifted qualities that are coming automatically, then just smile. So that's another way of cutting through all those that do not have any pressure or pushing. It's just through seeing clearly. And recently, and I'm just playing around with this one now, but I find it very helpful for me, is that a couple of things that are missing in that I think are very important in the spiritual path. Mm-hmm. One is heart. And another is, this is a long topic, but it's non-dual awareness. And non-dual awareness is, the experience of it is when you're angry at somebody and you feel how much you love them. Those seem contradictory, but they can both, exist right in the same moment. You can be worried about something and you can be delighted. I can look forward to coming here and talking to you, and I can be a little nervous because we haven't met before and I don't know what's going to happen. All those can coexist. So for anything that comes up that disturbs our meditation or disturbs our just peace of mind when we're out in the world, is that the first thing to do is just welcome it. Whatever comes up, we just welcome it. And not to get too political, but I was meditating the other day and thoughts about Donald Trump kept coming up.
Oh.
And it's like, whoa, what's this doing here? And when I just softened and opened to it, what I could see was that the mind was trying to help me deal with some things I found disturbing. So the motivation was there, and it just so I could welcome those thoughts, and if I welcome them without fighting it, then they tend to soften. If what happens is I'm sitting here and suddenly there's a lot of peace that comes over, what do you do with it? You just welcome it. Whatever comes, you just welcome it. Welcome can sort of imply a little bit of holding on. So the second piece is welcome, let it be. Welcome and let it be. And the third one is the one I mentioned before, which is surrendering into the expanse. It's just letting go of our sense of self in a way that feels like it's just dissolving out to be a part of everything. Which is somewhat paradoxical, but if you can just, do that a little, you get a sense of the flavor of that. So part of what the practice is about is gradually over time becoming more skilled at recognizing what's going on in the mind, and then having some type of wholesome way of responding to that. And the mind is very peaceful, and something comes up, welcoming, letting it be, surrendered into expanse work very, very well. Other times, I'll have these peaceful moments, and then all of a sudden there's nothing but, bowling balls going through my head, and, rock slides and stuff like that. And that's just too little. This I can go all the way back to the 6 R's.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a couple of months ago, I was meditating, and the day before it had been just really wonderful. And I sat down that day, and I couldn't do anything. It was just chaos in there, and they kept on getting making the practice simpler and simpler and simpler, and nothing worked. I did breath meditation for 25 years before I began to learn these other practices. About 20, so it's been about 50 years I've been doing this. And it just almost seemed humiliating to have to go back to the breath. But it's like I couldn't do anything else, so I started counting the breaths. And it took about 5 minutes, and then everything cooled out. And then I could move on to those subtler things. So that I really, I learned my lesson in that. You just look at what's going on, and you just be really clear and straight about it, and just do what's most helpful. So that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's very clear instruction. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Can I give you my other little model that sits behind all this?
Okay, please.
I'm trying to remember if it's in Befriending the Mind or if it came up later. But the Buddha and a lot of these practices put first and foremost actually awareness. It's way before trying to fix anything. It's just seeing things as they are with as much clarity as possible. And there's a whole spectrum of things that actually refer to awareness.
Can I just ask you here?
Yeah.
Seeing things as they are.
Right.
Can we just look a little bit, zoom into that? Because sometimes
Sure.
seeing things as they are, people perceive as imagination, what they think that they are, but not what actually is. So when you say seeing things as they are, what do you mean?
If you're imagining, seeing things as they are means seeing that you are imagining. There's nothing wrong with imagining, particularly if you realize you're doing it. But if you mistake the imagining for what's out there rather than something that's produced in here, then you're potentially confused, and lost. So what happens, particularly with deeper practice, is it doesn't make any difference what comes up. You just allow the meditation to come and focus in on that. To welcome it, let it be, relax into the expanse while it's all going on. And one way to lay all that stuff out is the spectrum of awareness, which I see as having 5 elements into it. Mm-hmm. The first element of awareness is the content, the storyline. We don't have to train ourselves to do that. It's evolution has trained us. Mostly that's what we pay attention to. Awareness is the content. But behind the content, there are processes that are going on in the mind. Thinking, imagining, making things up. My mind likes to explain things, complain. There's what's going on that produces that content. Okay. So if somebody's there and they're just lost in the story, it may be hard to let go of that. But if they just look and see, okay, what is the mind actually doing? What are the processes going on? It's thinking, it's imagining, it's feeling, etc. Then you sort of step back a little bit from the content and watching the processes that are going on. Okay. Behind those processes, there are qualities in the mind, whether it's tense, loose, spacious, busy, relaxed. Uh, And those tend to trigger the processes that the mind go through that produce the content. And so, as I was saying with Bhante Vimalaramsi, who is using, metta, compassion, etc., as the object of awareness, those are qualities of mind. So, when you're lost in the latest news or the latest disaster in your life or something else, it can be hard to get back to those qualities. But if you can see what's going on with the processes, and then once you can see the processes, it's easier to feel what those qualities are and relax into those. The fourth quality of awareness um, gets a little further out, but it's actually seeing awareness itself. It's actually awareness of awareness. Um, The second to last book I wrote was called Presence, and that's what it actually refers to, is that when we see something, we imagine ourselves looking at something, but meanwhile there's this whole field, which I just call presence. It's like looking at a field and you see the butterflies and the trees and the grass and all that stuff, but you can also just take in the field as a whole. And so that's awareness of the qualities of awareness. Um, Another metaphor I like to throw in there is actually outer space. Right? Outer space is basically empty, but without the emptiness of outer space, we wouldn't have planets or asteroids or derelict satellites or anything. So outer space is the place that holds everything that we experience.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The last one is probably the hardest of all of them, but it's actually emptiness. So you're sitting there meditating or sitting on the beach watching the sun go down, and there's very little going on inside. It's just quiet. And then suddenly you find yourself you're off on a storyline. So you can come back and you can either look back and see the storyline where it arose, or you can look and see if you can see what the storyline arose out of, because they just spontaneously come up. They arise out of emptiness. And so seeing the emptiness, again, in Buddhism, it's called Ciunaite, is what happens when all this stuff is connected together. The 6 R's, the three essential practices turning towards relaxing into and savoring and um, welcoming, let it be, surrendering into the expanse, are all movements from the content through the processes to the qualities to the awareness itself to the emptiness out of which they all arise. I'm going to stop there because that's a lot. Does that make sense, or are there soft spots in the middle of all that?
It totally makes sense. You have that experience.
Yeah.
If you don't, then it seems like a woo-woo thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So part of the art of practice is to get out of the language and get a sense of what it's actually looking towards.
Mhm.
So as somebody who's watching all of this, maybe paying attention to you and me and the content and all that stuff, but with just a subtle shift in awareness, they can come back into the awareness that's watching all this stuff going on. And at first it's very subtle, but once you sort of notice it, it seems kind of obvious. It's just our attention is not drawn to it, but it's always there. And part of the difficulty is people will expect much more clarity and precision. And that's not where it starts. Sometimes it starts really fuzzy. It's like looking into a fog and you're sort of aware of the fog and the fog clears a little bit and then it's a little bit fuzzy or something like that. And if you get desperate about it, I got to clean all this stuff up, it doesn't work so well. But if you just be with the fog, it'll gradually sort of lift itself. As you become more aware of it, it just tends to dissipate.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I think what I see. So when seekers are looking for that special emptiness experience or this peace that is always here, there's some kind of expectation that there's something that will fix it and you stay in that space, in that state forever. And I'm sorry. And it's like, where is that quick fix? How do I get there and stay forever? And that trips a lot of people because the way I see it, it's a gradual thing. It's a practice. Yeah. And you just sink in there, stay in there, savor it. Next time it's easier and it's longer and just becomes more natural. And then mind wants to rest there on its own by itself.
Yeah.
But that drive that says, oh, I want it now, 5 o'clock enlightenment. Please, what can I do?
Yeah.
That's one of the hindrances that I find.
Right. And so part of it is to see the hindrance as something that arises in your experience and feeling the drive to get a clear solution to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just letting your awareness gently go into what that drive feels like. And there'll be some tension or tightness in it. And you just invite it to relax. And gradually over time, as you develop more confidence in that, because what arises when it relaxes is just what's been there all the time. I always think of it, with my grandkids in an Easter egg hunt. We used to, hide Easter eggs out in the yard, but the thing we would do is the Easter eggs would always be someplace that you could actually see them.
Uh-huh.
Green egg would be, in a bunch of green leaves, and and a red egg would be in the red flowers or something. So it's like, no, it's all right there.
Uh-huh.
It's just what we don't say this to the grandkids, but it's just like they're assuming that it's red, so it's a flower. But it's just stepping back and letting the awareness open wide. And see, part of the trick of deeper meditation is to, how can I say this, is let it come to you. Let it come to you. What you want is an awareness that is just receptive. So, in some Buddhist practices, they talk a lot about, investigation. And so you're out searching for things. But when you're searching for something, you got an idea of what it is, and you're looking for the idea. And you may not see what's just actually there, which may not be what you think. So there's another whole way of this, which takes a while to develop some confidence in it. But just imagine sitting back, opening up the field of awareness, and just seeing what shows up. And sometimes the mind will tighten up a little bit and say, oh, there's some tightness. So you let the awareness go to that and just sort of opens up in it and see what happens when you go into it. I must say I'm tempted. Well, I'll try to do this quickly. I was chronically depressed for the first about 30 years of my life.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry, was that before your awakening?
Yeah.
before.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was way back there, and I did lots and lots of different things, uh, different kinds of therapy and body work, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of it helped a little bit, but it still kind of hung around, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, I have to say, I just got sick of it. And the depression would come up, and I would say, look, if you want to do me in, get it over with. I'm tired of fighting you. Do your damnedest. You know, I'm not going to push back at all. And then sort of lo and behold, when I wasn't fighting depression, it had no source of juice, you know, and it began to dissolve. And so I think, you know, meditators and people on a spiritual path, you know, will get into this place of just fighting something that goes along that seems to be standing in the way of where they want to go.
Right.
But if you welcome everything, then this thing that's standing in the way is bringing you a gift. It's saying, this is the path. This is the path. So here's another little model. There's suffering. Underneath suffering, there's always tenderness. If we didn't have any tenderness, we wouldn't suffer. Underneath the tenderness, if you can feel what tenderness is like, there's a little bit of openness with that. If there wasn't some openness, you wouldn't feel the tenderness. And under the openness is freedom. Most people would like to go from the suffering and bypass everything and go straight to the freedom. It doesn't work. You have to go through it. So you're tight, you open up to the tenderness, you feel the tenderness, and then you feel the openness that allows that, and that's what brings you out the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So again, everything is directly or indirectly connected to everything else. And if we try to cut something off and throw it in the trash, then we'll have a lot of cutting off, which at some point will come back to bite us.
And that tenderness can be also called vulnerability.
Yes, absolutely.
Or innocence.
Yes. Yeah, innocence is what allows tenderness, and when there's real innocence, you tend not to fight it. You know, you just open up to it. And you know, in talking with people who are, you know, grieving, you know, a good friend died or something like that. I mean, there can be this tendency to want to, you know, fight the grief back, but if you just relax into the grieving, you know, there's a bit of loneliness, you know, a little bit lost, and you look around. If you're letting yourself feel that, you look around and you can see it in the corners of people's eyes. Everybody's got some of that. And so the grieving becomes kind of poignant. It's sort of poignant, you know, it's and moist, you know, and light-filled. And as you open up to all that, it's not like the grieving goes away, but sometimes when I do that, I'll feel the grieving more strongly, and I realize I'm grinning like an idiot. You know, that just from not fighting it, and all the energy put into fighting it is like free and loose and can lift us up.
I want to ask you about resistance. It's the resistance of this push and pull or attachment or whichever way you want to word it, language, that thing that says, I am here, world is out there, I need to make something happen, or I can't let this go, something, that resistance.
Right.
Feeling of the resistance.
Yeah.
It's one of the keys how to pass that, or how to dissolve that, or how to be with that so that everything starts opening up. Because that resistance is holding everything at bay.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah. So the way that I often describe it, because I also worked as a psychotherapist for many years, and so people come in, with a lot of stuff, and I would say, the uncomfortable feeling, whatever it is your resistance that you're resisting, looks a certain way from the outside. But if you can let your awareness go right into the middle of it, sometimes it's different. And so you've been looking at this and fighting this for a while. Let's see what happens, just as an experiment. Just sort of relax and just imagine your awareness going right into the center of this. And if they're grieving, for example, or they're angry, or whatever it is, the first thing we'll look at is see if it's manifesting in the body. Does it feel stronger someplace than another, or does it just feel generalized? And so as they go to the center of it, if it feels like it's in their heart or in their shoulders or someplace like that, you can also use those as clues to let your awareness go into the shoulder muscles, go into the heart, go into your belly, go into the tension in your head, and just let it go to the middle of that. And when it goes deep enough, those things just begin to start fall away. And again, because you're not fighting it anymore. My old therapist used to say that anxiety is just excitement without oxygen. So excitement and anxiety are really the same thing. It's just with the anxiety, you're fighting it. But if you just go into it and just run with the energy, then it becomes excitement. And that's why, a lot of things from roller coasters to, anything else has some stuff that may, for some people, have some fear around it. But enjoying a roller coaster is relaxing into the ride. And I would say enlightenment, awakening, means that there's no place where you can't be. If you make a list of all the places you can't be, that list will represent your distance from enlightenment. But if you can be angry, sad, loving, open, etc., and just relaxed and energetic with it at the same time, then you're actually truly free. And just because you're angry doesn't mean you can beat somebody over the head. But you can feel energetically what's going on inside, and then figure out how you want to express it externally. Because we do have control over how we express it. We don't have any control over the feeling itself. It just arises out of causes and conditions and everything else.
It's really relaxing to speak to you.
Pardon?
I say it's really relaxing to speak to you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
You have that energy of like, oh, yeah, just relax.
Yeah.
Stay here.
And if I can pick on you a little bit, when you feel that relaxation, does it feel foreign or does it feel organic?
Natural.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
welcoming.
think it's that way for all of us, and some people and some things are catalysts for that, but it's recognizing that yeah, it's with us all the time.
Just want to make a wish for anyone who is listening and who's struggling with the seeking or trying to resolve, to do anything about that seeking itself.
Yeah.
To recognize that drive.
Yeah.
And relax into it.
Yeah.
And start seeing. Rather than seeking for something, start seeing what is here.
Yeah.
And it can be that simple.
Yeah. Part of what I like to say about that is there's a difference between drawn and being pushed.
Drawn and being pushed, yeah.
Push is usually comes out of fear. Draw comes from the heart. So if
Mm-hmm.
there's, if there are disturbances going on inside, one thing that's helpful to look for is to see not where you feel pushed, but where you feel drawn, where you feel drawn, and then go for that.
Like
And
that
usually,
longing comes from
yeah,
within.
yeah, yeah.
Do you have any advice or last words? So our conversation is coming to an end.
Uh, I don't know, maybe.
Okay.
Um, I, you know, we're all unique, and I find myself as the years go by doing less and less work, in groups uh, and leading big retreats. So lots of people. He's got a lot of administrative karma for one thing, but also it's that when I'm one-on-one with somebody, I can feel, the uniqueness of them more, and that's what I have, my responses to. Um, but it's a little stretch for my psychic abilities to imagine the people who are watching this, in the future. Um, uh, but if there's any global thing I would say is that, the Catholic doctrine of original sin has leaked into a lot of places around the world, particularly in the West. And Buddhism has the opposite approach. It's really they look at the inherent goodness, and if you can maybe not trust it completely, but just be curious enough to sort of take it on as something to explore, to see where your original goodness is. If you just sort of open up to that. Uh, and it can loosen up all kinds of things because sometimes it'll have, a layer of peacefulness that'll, uh, maybe there are some ways you were hurt by somebody or abused or something underneath that got shoved under. And as this peacefulness gets clear and clear, it frees up the abuse and the anger, and the rest of that stuff. So I think it's helpful to have some kind of way of thinking about what you're willing to do outside for other people. And one thing that I think is very important is non-destructive. Because if we hurt somebody else later on, we're likely to feel bad for that. About the fact that we hurt somebody. So I like to talk a lot about open heart and good boundaries. And sometimes we really need to get good boundaries on people, but that's different. But whatever ways is working through it to find, heart uh, and the longing, for freedom uh, and deep connection with life that I think is just right. That flows through all of this. It's part of our essence, just as everything else is part of our essence. There's part of that original goodness that's in there. And see what happens if you can trust that a little bit more.
So wonderful. Yeah.
Befriended.
Very different as well. Like not many people would mention that.
Yeah. Well, and I ran a counseling center for street kids for a while, and
Uh-huh.
these were kids who were really, really battered. And we didn't have a lot of money, but I was able to, on a pittance, hire a few people that I needed to train, to kind of work with them. And the first thing I said to them is when a kid comes in there, um, is the first thing you need to do is to find something good about them you can mention. And you can't fake it because these kids have been lied to all the time, and so they will pick up on lies, but you have to see something that's really genuine. And it may be as simple as, wow, those are nice shoes. But something that reaches out, and connects with a quieter place, regardless of what they have on top of that. Uh, and that's the collective road to freedom.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And just before you go, how can people reach you, and do you work one-on-one? If somebody wants
Yes,
to work with you?
I do work one-on-one. I'm a little reluctant to put my phone number out over the internet, but you can go to www.dougkraft.com or www.easeandawake.com. And that's got just tons of my material on it, but there's also a little contact form.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to get in touch with me, you can just put a note in that, and that'll get to me, and then I can get back to you.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, thank you so much. Such a pleasure and honor to be with you and listen to you and let something land in. Thank you.
My honor as well. Thank you
Absorb
so
it.
much.
Yeah. And thank you everyone who watched and listened. I hope you enjoyed this. Please put a comment, like, share, whatever you do. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.